as we're really running out of time, I will just immediately invite our next speaker, Andrey Kosinskiy, who is another key architect of the Soviet architectural scene. His career is mainly connected with the reconstruction of Tashkent after the earthquake. And he's the author and co-author of the number of really important constructions and buildings which you could see in the exposition. Mr. Kosinskiy is a professor and honorary member of the International Academy of Architecture. And Mr. Kosinskiy's talk is going to be about the spatial and temporal genesis of architectural form. Andrey Stanislavovich, прошу.
Ой, мне надо показать, как этим пользоваться. Спасибо.
Well, to some understanding, I will continue what Mr. Novikov has said. I was the witness of the third period he was talking about when I graduated the Moscow Architecture Institute in 1954. And it was in the spring and in summer, Stalin's empire, which was popularly dubbed vampire, was destroyed, and whatever I learned became not necessary at all. After some confusion, a company of well-known architects went to the United States to get their experience. They brought a very good film which was called Architecture and Construction in the USA. It was overwhelming for all of us. And after that, the libraries were full of foreign periodicals. The tables of the drafters and designers were covered. The cells of Mies van der Rohe with the round windows of Louis Kahn. And the stepped walls of the Japanese metabolism, and the Bible became the 5 recipes of Corbusier became the Bible. And for the Soviet architect, the main source of inspiration became the professional architectural foreign magazine, and it was the same for me as well. Now I will show very quickly what I consider the modernist buildings that I did. It is the beginning of the 60s. This is the building of the plant named after Likhachov. I jumped over something already? Oh, no. Well, I moved in the wrong direction. Here it is. This is administrative and laboratory building of the plant named after Likhachov. And this is also the same plant, and this is the Scientific Institute Snitmash. By the way, I was working there. There was also a very interesting project, the site development of the Taganskaya Square, which was unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, not implemented. In 1966, I went to Tashkent for 2 years to help reconstruct and rebuild the city of Tashkent, which went through the terrible earthquake. But then I stayed there for 14 years, not 2 but 14. I have to say that Tashkent absolutely changed my understanding about architecture. Well, imagine, a wild climate. The temperature is 45 degrees and the soil can be 90, 100 degrees. Very little water, very little greenery. Well, it's just hell. And here we are constructing and some typical buildings, European, let's say mid-European, European houses where you cannot live, you cannot work. At the same time, there is an old city. The walls are built of adobe, but the climate there is wonderful because people do not live in the buildings. They live in the yards, and the building just surrounds this yard. So people are working and living in the same place. I mean the tradition. And this is the optimal, let's say, climatical and social way of life. And one of the first works that I did in Tashkent, it was the center in the Chemazgan region. It is a district. It was already developed. It was full of buildings with the typical buildings. There was 8 hectares left in the very middle, and we were supposed to make a very big the cultural trade center, and also to include some office space, some scientific institutes, because the work has been done, but the most interesting was this high-rise hotel. This looks like a pyramid. The thing is that the seismicity was very high in Tashkent, and it was not allowed to build the constructions of more than 4 stories. But I needed 20. And in order to construct a building, a 9-story building, you had to travel to Moscow, and nobody knew whether you would get the approval or not. Okay, so we started thinking, what could we do? And once I was reading some scientific magazine and saw an article which said that the Japanese have invented a ship that does not show this motion. Why? Because it's one of its the lower part consists of 2 parts, and they were separated by a layer of water. I'm not sure whether the Japanese constructed such a ship, but I took this idea and I thought that why not I build a building where the building itself is separated from the soil by water. And here is this building. Here you can see this building. This is sitting in a bath, let us say. There is a layer of water underneath, 20 stories. This was my idea, with a very big atrium. And in order this building to I needed 2 things. Number 1, the center of wages should be very low, and the balance should be central. Of course, this is not very easy, but the idea in a nutshell is like that. This building brought me to the conclusion that if you look not in the magazines, look for the form in the magazines, but in the environment, local environment, you can find very interesting forms. 75,000 tons is the weight of the building. and it was stabilized with just 2-meter deep water. And the construction of this building was much easier than to construct the typical houses. And it could be much cheaper than such buildings, the normal constructions. So here is the gigantic atrium, and later on I was asked many times, so what about the Portman's influence on you? And I said that there was no influence of Portman because nobody knew about it, and we were doing it at the same time. But he managed to build it, but I didn't. Thus, I stopped being a modernism, and that's why I was not included into the Belogorodsky and Novikov's book. But nevertheless, I continued to work. But yes, I wanted to also tell you that we were working with the feather, trying to make it vertical, etc., etc. And here you can see on the right below that. So there, the sun is at the 72 degrees height, and we made special constructions when the sun is the highest. And in winter, sun could enter the building, but the climate there is disgusting because I can say disgusting because in summer it is hot and in winter it is cold, it is rainy. And look what we did. We checked how this protection, the sunshades, will be working on the with the eastern and western side. There was the street of Bogdan Khmelnytsky from airport of Tashkent, bringing them to one of the thoroughfares of the city. And we constructed a very long, you can see it here, a very long building with 500 flats. And according to the normatives of the time, we could not do that. But if we had to do such a building, then the protection against sun was as follows. This sun screening was done by the vertical screens, but they were vertical, as I have said. Then it meant that the walls were protected during summer, but they remained to be protected during winter as well. And here we also thought of something very interesting. We prepared the sun screening system vertical, but we opened it to the south. And it was calculated in such a way that the sun in summer, the high sun was coming only, the rays from the sun were coming to the half of the balconies, and in winter it reached into the rooms. And these were, you can see that these screenings were made from the reinforced concrete, and there was the convection stream. Because you know after midday, the walls could be 90 degrees, and thus we saw that it is just a hot house, and it was not possible to construct like that. Very soon after that, there was a complaint sent to Moscow, and it was said that Kosinskiy is constructing a hot house where you cannot live. The commission from Moscow came, and they followed me to that house, and they did not believe that there was no air conditioning. What was the complaint? That the temperature was 26 degrees during the day. I was very much surprised that yes, the temperature in my house was 26 degrees. But the house where I lived, it was in a brick brick house, the temperature could reach 32 degrees. And you know that each degree there was their weight in gold. And here was born the understanding about the so-called climatic walls. And I was accused that I have stolen it from some foreign architects, etc., etc. Okay. And the third object, this is the bathhouse, national bathhouse, the so-called hammam. The administration demanded. I will show you the next picture, and you can see that how these bathhouses were constructed in the 16th century. Well, I have to finalize because I haven't started yet, probably. Well, this is how they were built. They were sunk into the earth, and they were covered with soil because the eastern bathhouses are cool, and when outside it is 40-45 degrees, in the relaxation rooms it is 25, and the highest temperature in the soaping room, the so-called soaping room, it can be 40. They were heated from underneath, and the floor was heated as required. But in old periods it was everything. There was dirt, water, which was removed into our rigs, etc., etc. But here we offered something else. We remember that back in the 16th century they managed to keep this the air cool, the so-called homes. So they were not, the water that kept in the homes was evaporated, and it was not refrigerated, but it was quite cool. So on the top we had such a covering, the system of covering, without any hydroisolation. This is ceramic bricks, and at the expense of evaporation we received what is necessary in the buildings. From underneath we had the gas furnace heating gun, which was situated in the very center of the lawn. So thus we constructed such an interesting form. From the right side it is for the women, from the left for the men. There are also restaurants, etc. There were also finished saunas, separate apartments, etc. So this is the building that we received. Well, it is you have to make the decision whether it's a national or not national. Further on, and the final work for me in Tashkent, it was the reconstruction of the district Sibzar of Old Tashkent. And here you can see the system that that was there. Why did we get this project? Because after the earthquake, the buildings were not collapsing. Some of those buildings are still there, but the administration of the city decided, and of the republic decided, to change everything. And the total demolition of this adobe building showed that there was a new district built, and all the buildings were 9-storied. And it turned out that the people that were living in 1-story adobe buildings could not be placed in this 9-story building. So what was the idea? What was the idea of this total demolition? Those out of 8 projects all over the old city, the experimental project Kalkaus, you can see on the right hand side, it was implemented. At the very beginning of this work, we understood that we will have to solve all the problems. So we spent about 2 years preparing. I knew all the people who lived there. I knew the system of the city. This is something, it's a separate topic, and I will not dwell on it, of course. We realized that we have to solve all the problems that exist in the world architecture, and something else. What shall we do with the Adobe traditional constructions? Substitute it, replace it with what? Why? And we managed to find solutions. We refused to construct mini districts. We decided to take the big part of the city territory and keeping the streets there already that exist as the pedestrianized streets. All the shops were brought to the streets, to the edges of the streets, and these shops were not separating the so-called mahala, as they called it in Uzbek, but no, they were joining them. We worked out the climatic model of the district, which allowed us to keep the heat balance in the yards and also in the buildings, so that so there should be these morning breezes. Morning breezes should be kept as long as possible. In practice, we required to prepare to work out the many-storied buildings, which were provided with water, with greeneries. We also placed big the gardens in different stories, and where you could grow even fruit. We also worked out the so-called growing living structures from 1 to 5 stories, with vertical ventilation. We tried to preserve whatever existed in the old town. The streets were kept preserved, and following the old wall, we tried to keep all the historical buildings. What is the most interesting here? At this level, it became clear. So so that on 1 hectare, 280 people lived in the old system and in the traditional buildings, and we managed to increase the number to 480, and the average height of the building was 5 stories. And it was much more than the existing 20-story buildings. So it was a very good decision, we think. Well, the project was considered and agreed on all the levels, including the Moscow, and it was approved and then forgotten. In the 70s, 80s, together with my theoretical ideas, all these works were published in the Soviet and in the foreign professional press. I was criticized mostly for this bathhouse, hammam. I was blamed for lots of things, in the non-critical transfer of traditional forms into the modern reality, and in indecent usage of the palace forms and in utilitarian building, etc., etc. They were just based on their on the lack of knowledge of the Eastern architecture. But for me, it was a kind of protest. There was no borrowing, because there are no arches in the seismicity. There were a few flat domes. Well, remember, register. All architecture was interior, so the streets of the cities were covered. The facades of were not known. They were just blind walls with small doors, and maybe decorated with ceramics. For me, it was a protest against that architecture, because this bathhouse was turned inside out, because it was facing the city. And also it had quite normal microclimate inside. No, a few more words. And when we are trying to bring some notions into architecture, it brings the changes into architecture that something has been said by Mr. Novikov. But style is just a fashion. It can be the highest, but and the artist itself is not predictable. He does something that has not been done before that. He does not follow the style. He does it do it himself. The epigones do it. So that's why these styles are transient, while masterpieces are eternal. Now, when we talk about the spirit of the place, are almost trivial, but at the same time, I'm sure that looking for the exact architectural form, the most important part is the so-called genius loci, the spirit of the place. It is the basis of existence of any nation, and for each architectural, for each place on this world, there can be only one correct architectural decision and solution. Well, you know it yourselves. The maximum level of rapprochement of this can be provided with the time, with its technical possibilities. So space is the mother of architecture, and time is the father of architecture. So we understand architecture as a phenomenon which exists between the nature and the society, and it is formidable and dangerous to the both. And from here comes the understanding of the role of architecture, not like as a demiurge, but a very wise intermediary between the society and the nature. We are not supposed to organize the space. We have to organize ourselves in it without damaging it. All these ideas were voiced on the World Architectural Biennale Interach 83. It was supported, and I also presented them in my thesis. And now I would like to read a small quote of the review on my thesis. Mr. Khan Magomedov, who is one of the biggest theoretics of modern architecture. Well, deliberating as a theorist and experimenting as a practitioner, Kosinskiy worked out an original creative concept of shaping that is based on the dependence of the form on the factors of place and time, and is constantly seen in his publications. And of course, one could question some ideas, but one has to admit that we are dealing with a concept that is not contradictory and has been born in suffering, but without which we cannot imagine the architecture of the 70s and 80s. Well, after I left Tashkent, I would like to show you one of my last works. This is an hotel in the Khanty-Massitsky. I had this floating house, I had a sweating house, and here is this is the house looking like snow. Well, I did not manage to do it for 100%, but 50% it is there.